We're going to go ahead and call the meeting of the Bloomington City Council to order. If everyone will stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, and please remain standing for a moment of silence. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll?
Alderman Matthey.
Here.
Alderman Sage.
Here.
Alderman Malamoy.
Here.
Alderman Burgess.
Here.
Alderman Painter.
Here.
Alderman Schmidt.
Here.
Alderman Black.
Here.
Alderman Hallman. Alderman Bray.
Here.
Mayor Renner.
Thank you very much. We're going to start out with the recognitions and appointments. And item 5A shouldn't be a surprise to anyone who has not been living under a rock for the last few weeks. And that is we have a loyalty oath for Mr. Timothy Gleason. And we're honored to have Tim. And if we could have Tim step forward with our distinguished city clerk, Cherry Lawson, and have Cherry administer the oath of office.
Having been appointed to the office of City Manager in the City of Bloomington and the County of McLean aforesaid, do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Illinois and faithfully discharge the duties of the office of City Manager according to the best of my ability, so help me God.
I do.
Okay, congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations, Mr. Gleason. Now we're going to another of our appointments and recognitions, and this is for Mr. Jim Karch, who I see smiling already, and you're going to... Oh, wow. Whoa! Well, we have a recognition of Jim Karch, Public Works Director, on being recognized by the Illinois Society of Professional Engineers with the 2018 Illinois Engineer of the Year Award. And I'll bet you that conference swings like nothing else. And I tell you, I was commenting to somebody, I think it was Maria, the Pantograph, must not have been budget cuts in this place. Yeah, this is really nice. Anyway, this is, and it's a very nice case. I wouldn't mind stealing either of them. Anyway, Illinois Society of Professional Engineers. Illinois Government Engineer of the Year presented to Jim Karch in recognition of outstanding service to the citizens of his community and the state of Illinois. Congratulations, Jim. Thank you, Mayor. Thanks. So don't leave yet, although that's okay. And we're shifting gears ever so slightly to public comment. Oh.
You have one other addendum.
Proclamation for the beach.
Oh. Bad mayor. Yes. How could I have forgotten this? Thank you so much. Jan Lancaster, come on down. The price might not be right, but we would love to see you. Yeah, come on. I'll be able to give you a hug in just... I'll give you too. The first is proclamation recognizing the 25th anniversary of the Bistro and Bloomington's first Downtown Pride Festival. We're doing a 2-for-1. Whereas in 1993, doesn't seem like it was that long ago,
Yeah.
Jan Lancaster acquired the
75 in bar years. Yeah.
75 in bar years, acquired the Bistro, a then 9-month-old business at 316 North Main Street in downtown Bloomington. And whereas the Bistro has become a downtown institution welcoming everyone and celebrating our diverse community. Whereas the Bistro is celebrating its 25th anniversary and hosting Bloomington's first Downtown Pride Festival, aiming to establish the festival as an annual event. And whereas it is important to embrace diversity, including LGBTQIA community and their friends and allies, and whereas we wish continued success to the Bistro and all of our downtown businesses, now therefore I, Terry Renner, Mayor of the City of Bloomington, Illinois, do recognize and celebrate the 25th anniversary of the Bistro and Bloomington's first Downtown Pride Festival in the city, and call upon the people of Bloomington, Illinois, to join their fellow citizens in the special observance. In witness thereof, I have hereunto set my hand and caused the seal of the City of Bloomington to be affixed this 23rd day of July, 2018. And let me put this in here.
Thank you. Thank you.
And now, I was so anxious to get to public comment. And just as a clarification, if you have specific questions or concerns, you can always come to the Mayor's Open House. It's kind of like a town hall meeting, although it's usually smaller than a typical town hall meeting. But we have from 4:30 to 5:30 every Friday before a regular city council meeting. So we just had one last Friday. And you can bring questions that we can usually get you answers to right away. Sometimes, not always, sometimes we can solve your problems on site, and that's part of our movement toward continuing an increased transparency. And we can also engage in dialogue. Doesn't have to be what's on the agenda. It can be really any issue or any concern that you might have. And so if you want problem solved, we sit right around the fishbowl. Come on in, talk to us, and that's every other week. Public comment is of a different form, and that is your opportunity to speak on the record. So we do not respond. So we have 3 this evening, up to 3 minutes apiece. Tim Tilton, Scott Steinerly, and Donna Bolin. And we'll start in that order. Tim Tilton.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. Thank you for the opportunity. Tim Tilton, 200 West Monroe, here in downtown Bloomington. I had a couple of questions for our engineering staff in regards to an item on the agenda this evening, and that would be concerning the elevator required at the Coliseum. And I have passed on my questions to the qualified people in that area, and I will meet with that person at a later date and will not take up time for the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tim. Thanks for all you do. Next, we have Scott Steinerly and then Donna Bolin.
Scott Steinling, Ward 5. My concern is, number one, I know Jim's not going to like this, I keep bringing it up. The streets in this town are absolutely pathetic. I know that you've passed a bond referendum to redo them, but I would like someone to explain to me why it's taken this long. You know, it's terrible that you can ruin a set of rims just driving on Bloomington streets. They're that bad. Do you recall, Terry, when you called Diane Benjamin a worthless piece of garbage? Maybe you are hoping that people will forget about that before the next election. And if anyone runs against you, hopefully the voters are going to remember this. I am truly sorry that the council did not remove you from office right then. This is no kind of conduct for a mayor to set for an example for the city. And I don't care if you've been in this job 40 years. You know, once you make a strike like that and you're done. And I don't think much of this council for not removing you from office. Karen said that, well, you were, took a leave of absence. Well, why didn't you take a leave of absence from Illinois Wesleyan? You were well enough to do your professor duties at Wesleyan, weren't you? And I guess the thing is, I'm ashamed, really, if anyone says, is Terry Renner the mayor of the city of Bloomington? I'm afraid that I'd have to say, I'm afraid so. Jim gets tired, like I said, gets tired of hearing me talk about the roads. And maybe when the streets are paved in gold around your house, they're not paved in gold around the rest of the city. And I have a problem with that. I really do. Everybody's treated equally. We all pay taxes in this lousy city. And if you would control your spending, the taxes wouldn't keep going up. Get rid of the fireworks. I know it only would be a small percentage, but that's money you could put right in the cotton picking roads. Remember, Bloomington is home rule. You can overrule that. You can say, we're not going to have the fireworks. But no, it would upset people, and I wonder if the Bloomington Police Department, they really get concerned when one of their officers stops somebody and writes them a ticket. I don't think so, Terry. And I don't think one of your students is really upset. They may be upset when they get an F, but I bet you aren't upset, are you? So, you know, Ameren, Illinois had the large power outage at 4:20 this afternoon, and maybe the city needs to start looking at different power companies, you know, as an alternative. You know, I know you want to give everything to Ameren, but Terry, you need to wake up and realize that this is not a governing body of Terry. Thank you.
Thank you. The next is Donna Bolin.
Good evening, I'm Donna Bolin. Excuse me. I live in Ward 2, and I'm going to be talking about pension spiking this evening. I've spoken many times before. The IMRF website states that the payouts for accumulated sick leave and vacation, if made 2 months after retirement, will not result in spiking, and therefore eliminate the need for accelerated payments. The IMRF administrators call the practice of pension spiking immoral. I believe it's been the Council's intent to wait making a policy change to avoid litigation until after the Illinois courts ruled as to whether eliminating the practice of pension spiking violated the pension reduction clause in the Illinois Constitution. A state appeals court in Springfield has affirmed cities have the right to modify workers' employment and compensation agreements to prevent pension spiking without running afoul of the state constitution public worker pension protection. The city's historical data shows that $300,000 per year, totaling $2 million, has been paid to IMRF in accelerated payments since 2012. Based on the historical data, at least $5 million is projected in future payments. On page 3 of every agenda packet, priorities are listed, one of which is financial planning. On page 4 of every agenda packet, city expenses, especially those tied to labor costs, will continue to increase over the years. The potential for the general fund structural deficit will continue to threaten future budgets. In today's agenda, under financial impact of the pension spiking, it says the accelerated payment for this payout is expected to be $49,000. Accelerated payment is a pension liability resulting from pension spiking. Accelerated payments are not budgeted. Costs are expected to be absorbed by other operational savings. Fees have just gone up 3% annually. This does not make me happy. I'm aware that legal is waiting for a ruling on the Union Labor Relations Board, but the change could be made now for non-union members. The council can change its policy to pay IMRF member employees their accumulated sick leave and vacation after retirement without fear of litigation. The policy can be changed and will improve financial planning. Please make the change as soon as possible. The new city manager is quoted as saying he will look for internal savings before raising taxes. This change will affect internal savings, and I really recommend that you make that change. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. We next move to the consent agenda, and there is one item that I have been asked to remove from the consent agenda, and Mr. Juergens will expand on that there's as I understand, a change in item 7J as in Jack, and that is the last item on the consent agenda. Are there any other items that any member of the City Council would like to have removed? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented with the exception of item 7J as in Jack?
I will make that motion, Mayor.
Moved by Alderwoman Schmidt. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alderwoman Painter. Any further discussion? Seeing none, if you could go ahead and vote electronically. Sorry. I think I'm Alderman Matthews. There we go. Okay, I was missing somebody. The motion passes 8-0. There are no nays to announce, Madam Clerk. Thank you. Mr. Juergens.
Thank you, Mayor. This item deals with the ordinance approving the small wireless cell facilities ordinance. This was legislation that was passed a few months ago. The deadline to have something approved so that fees can be charged is August 1. We modeled this after the Illinois Municipal League ordinance, also worked with the town of Normal and trying to come up with some mirror provisions and some complementary provisions between the two communities on this. One provision that we realized that we have in there this evening deals with the requirements as to whether or not you can have wood poles. We have a lot of wood poles that Ameren utilizes. Our engineering staff does not have an issue with those wood poles. So the reason that we've asked to have this pulled from the consent agenda is to approve it as amended. We would amend section 14C to allow wood poles. With that, we would ask for your consideration and approval of the ordinance. Happy to answer any questions.
Questions? Excuse me, Alderwoman Painter.
Why don't they start to bury this stuff rather than putting wood poles up?
And I'm going to ask George Boyle, who's taken the lead on this project in our office, to come up here, and he might be able to answer some of these questions as well. And I don't know if Jim Karch wants to come back up here as well. He might also have some insight into the bearing. All of that said, it's my understanding that under this this new legislation that they're entitled to put up a pole, but I'll ask George to comment on that as well. If you have any comment, George.
You may know more about realities either way.
So, Jim, do you have anything to offer with that?
Yeah, so in essence, with this question of why don't they bury, it's really a cost perspective from a utility company. That's really what it comes down to. Whenever they don't have to bury something, if they're not required to, they try to keep their costs in line like anybody else. And so in this case, and this is a little bit separate from the small cell issue. We're talking about kind of some overall lines and when they bury and how they bury. But in this case, for small cell, they want to be as able to provide as much receptivity as they can. So being up on the wood poles, those kind of things, that helps them to reach the broadest group they can. So if that helps answer.
In conjunction with that, these are antennas that are broadcasting, so there has to be some, I would think. Now, I was a history major rather than an engineer like Mr. Kirch, but I think that's the reason that, we're talking about co-locating is actually kind of a fancy word for hanging or mounting. So.
Okay.
And the other issue, just to bring up, is wood poles. The reason why we requested that is structural assessments were part of our ability to look at this. So whenever we say that, we also want to make sure that that we respect some of what's there. The more change that you have to neighborhoods, the more impact people feel. So if we have the ability to utilize what's there, most times once those small cells are in place, they're not that visible. Most people don't hardly, they become background white noise. So that was kind of the hope as well.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Alderman Mathey.
I was just going to add, and Jim or George touched on this a bit, that if you've ever seen all the commercials for 4G wireless, the small cells, this is the start of 5G wireless, so they have to be in the air. All the cables to them we would like to be buried, but the devices themselves must be on buildings or in the air for it to work right. So.
Okay. Any other questions? Is there a motion to approve as presented, as amended?
I'll make that motion.
Moved by Alderwoman Painter, second by Alderwoman Bray. Any other comments? If everyone will go ahead and vote on the motion as amended. The motion carries 8-0. There are no nays to announce, Madam Clerk. And now we move to our regular agenda. Our regular agenda under 8A. Someone's already up here. Consideration of a resolution waiving the formal bidding process to enter into a venue agreement with Live Barn and Company for the installation and operation of an automated sports broadcasting system at the Pepsi Ice Center at no cost to the city, as requested by the Parks and Recreation and Cultural Department. And I'll turn it over to Mr. Tetzloff.
Thank you. Good evening. My sole job tonight is to introduce Michael Hermbrodt, the Pepsi Ice manager. He's the one that brought this idea forward. It's truly a win-win for the city and the customers of the Pepsi Ice Center. So I'll let Michael do his thing.
Thank you. Good evening. Live Barn, I found Live Barn. Essentially, it was a need from our customers that have been coming to me for the last 3 or 4 years, asking us if they could videotape, they could borrow ladders into the building to come and record things for that. So for safety reasons, that wasn't a good thing. So I started looking in to see if there was any kind of software that would allow us to meet the needs of our customers while still allowing them to kind of get what they wanted out of this. So Live Barn is a proprietary service that actually they hook up the camera and the wiring for us at their cost. There's no cost to us. And what it does is it reads the flow of a hockey game. So it's subscription based. So our customers can buy into this in this prescription or in this subscription. And they can watch their kids if they can't attend the games at the arena. It also is in over 40 different ice arenas in Illinois already. It's in over 500 around the country. So not only when they get the subscription to buy in to watch the games in Pepsi Ice Center, anytime our youth hockey programs go up to Chicago area or St. Louis, anywhere, if they have that Live Barn in there, they get to see those games without having to travel outside. People that want to watch the games and cannot be here in Bloomington to watch the games, that's the youth hockey travel, all those type of things, and ISU hockey that plays in the arena, they can buy into and watch those games there. So it also works as kind of promoting the ice arena itself and the city of Bloomington as well. In speaking to kind of common other arenas that are the same size as ours, you do get a certain percentage back if they subscribe to the code that Live Barn gives us. So there is some revenue that we can generate from that. But in speaking to other rink managers of the same size as us, what they said is the biggest thing they have, it's an extra added security system. And those cameras are on all the time. So if there's any issues that we need to look back to see if there's any issues in the facility, we can look back and see those things as well.
Questions?
Just a quick question. How much do you anticipate getting in terms of revenue?
It won't be a significant amount just based on we're the community-based rink, so it's mostly the in-house travel programs that go from Chicago to St. Louis. There may be some revenue built off of ISU's hockey program. We have schools come from all around the country to come and play against them. It's the parents, it's the grandparents, the aunts and uncles that don't live in Bloomington that want to watch their nieces, nephews, grandkids come and watch. I would suspect that the managers that I've spoken to that have similar size rinks in a similar demographic, they'll make a couple $100 every quarter on it. The larger rinks that have larger tournaments, showcase tournaments and those kind of things, there's a facility in Blaine, Minnesota that has 8 rinks. They've told me they generate anywhere between $2,000 to $3,000 every quarter on their facility. But it's really based on what we have here. You're welcome.
Other questions? Is there a motion then? Moved by Alderman, excuse me, Scott Black. Well, we do have a majority of all the women. And second by Alderwoman Schmidt. Any other comments? Okay, if everyone will go ahead and vote, please. Thank you. Motion carries 8-0. There are no nays to announce, Madam Clerk. Thank you so much for all your help and work on this. Next, we move to item 8B, is consideration of a contract with Felmy Dickerson Company for construction of an elevator in the amount of $610,500 to comply with the ADA, Americans with Disability Act, at the Grossinger Motors Arena.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to have a couple of comments before Russ gets into the specifics. I guess there might be value in understanding the history of this, how we got to today. The Attorney General's office identified several concerns a couple of years ago, and the elevator is the last of all those concerns that city staff and council's taken action on and has addressed. The original, at the very beginning of this, I believe in 2016, the engineer's estimate for all of the corrections or concerns that the AG's office had was an engineer's estimate of about $850,000. Through work, Russ's staff, facility staff, they've saved about $175,000 over the course of the last 2 years. So this is the last item. It's a smaller project. It was put out to bid once with no bids. It was put out a second time with only one bid, which we think is part of the reason for the higher bid total. But even with this higher bid total, all the work completed, it's going to put us at about $950,000, which is about $100,000 over the original estimate by engineering. So about a 10% increase collectively. Russ, go ahead.
Thank you, Thank you, City Manager Gleason. That was a very good introduction. I do have some slides at the end of the presentation that will kind of review what the City Manager just went over. So just going to dive right into the issue. Essentially, as City Manager indicated, this is the last issue, the ADA issue at the arena, formerly the Coliseum. When we started this project, it was still known as the Coliseum. That's why you'll see it intermingled with all the documentation, and essentially was bid as the Coliseum. So what kind of to drive it home, this is the issue. Essentially, the ADA code requires at least one accessible route to connect each story of a multi-story building. And yes, we have existing elevators there. Unfortunately, based on the operation and the way the facility is used, those existing elevators can't be used during some events to provide this accessibility issue. So this is probably one of the best pictures. I'm going to spend a little time here just to kind of go over some of the issues that have come up. So current operation is whenever there is a floor event, like a concert, something like that, anyone that with an accessibility issue has to come down this hallway, go down this restricted area to get to an elevator that's right here, basically right here. During an event, most of your talent require this hallway to be restricted access. This is where all the dressing rooms are located. There are no other dressing rooms in the facility. So because of their contractual obligations, and pretty much every single act that comes in there requires that there is restricted access. They won't sign a contract unless you provide that requirement in the contract. So we restrict, this hallway is restricted. No one can go through it that doesn't have proper
security clearance, and then they can be escorted. So that is what has been occurring over the past few years is an ADA patron that has a floor seat that wants to go up to the concourse level to buy a soda, to buy something to drink, to buy a T-shirt, to go to the restroom. They have to be restricted through that, escorted through that restricted access hallway to the existing elevator. Basically, in discussion with the Attorney General, that is not allowable. Essentially, what they have said is that you cannot require or mandate that someone with a handicap do anything different or have to be done anything different with them than an able-bodied person. So the able-bodied people that attend a concert, if they want to go from the floor to buy a T-shirt to get to that concourse level, they can take the stairs. Obviously, someone with a disability cannot do that, so the only option right now is restricted access. So you have to treat them no differently than you treat someone that's able-bodied. One of the other alternatives that has been used, I don't know if it's used as much anymore, but then they bring them down the ADA hallway, take them outside, enter through the VIP entrance, and then use the existing elevator. Obviously, that is not acceptable either. Having someone exit the building and re-enter the building is not an acceptable solution. So this issue has been discussed quite extensively over the past several years. A couple years, as we were working all the other ADA issues, we hired a design consultant to assist us with this. With their assistance, city staff assistance, and VenueWorks assistance, we've looked at many options, other alternatives to avoid the expense of the elevator. And quite honestly, there isn't anything. Kind of the layout of the facility prohibits that. Essentially on this side of the arena, which I don't have much of a picture, but that is where the ice plant is. There is no room for any expansion, any kind of addition of any kind of dressing rooms. The only place you can really build anything is on the south side of the arena. So if you wanted to build dressing rooms on the south side of the arena, you would not be able to circumvent this restricted access area because you still have to get patrons off the floor to the other areas, and you still have to essentially get the talent from the, if we did put dressing rooms here, out to the floor. So you can't interact and basically provide that cross connection, or however you want to say it, basically between the talent and patrons. So it really, we've investigated multiple things. Use of existing elevators. There is a freight elevator in this corner. However, whenever there's a concert, usually the concert set up right here on the west end of the arena. This entire area is filled with cords, filled with storage equipment. The access through that area is completely cut off. It's essentially would not be ADA compliant. So there's no way to use the existing freight elevator at the essentially the northwest corner. So this elevator, and then there is one other elevator over here, but it does not go down to the event level. So we're restricted to the use of this elevator, and because of that restricted access hallway, there is no other way to provide that access. So I spent enough time on that one. I'll move on. So here is what the existing south entrance looks like. Here's the VIP entrance I talked about. Here's what is designated as the ADA entrance. That is that hallway that goes from the outside directly to the event level floor. And then the restricted access hallway runs perpendicular to that through the arena to get over to the elevators that are right inside this door. With the proposed addition, this is what the elevator will look like. It will be constructed on the outside of the building, but the entrance and the access to the elevator will still come from the inside. So we're not requiring anyone to go outside the building. They will essentially come down the ADA hallway, make a turn to another hallway that will be built inside an existing room, and then access the elevator, go up to the concourse level. One thing is we are not doing a 3-stop elevator to get to the 3rd floor to save some money. We did get agreement with the Attorney General's office that if someone from the floor could come to this elevator, walk down the hallway to the other elevator to get up to the 3rd floor. That is compliant. There is no requirement that this has to go to the top. That is a substantial savings because if you had to go take this clear to the roof, you would have to do some roof replacement, and which equates to a lot more expense. So to reiterate what the city manager had indicated, this is when we started the ADA project, when I became aware of it in early 2016, we initially put some cost estimates together on what this was going to cost to bring all the issues that the Attorney General brought to our attention into compliance. Our estimate was roughly $856,000. And to back up a little bit, we did estimate the elevator, and that was just a very, very preliminary estimate of about $300,000 of what we thought it would cost for the elevator. So moving on to actually what we've actually spent, and oops, one more page. Oh. There we go. So grand total to date, we have spent nearly $350,000, and that includes all of the interior issues. There was some shower modifications that had to be done. A lot of this was also the sidewalk project that is now complete, which does the cost here does not include the safety bollards. That was a separate issue, but we bid it together. This includes just the sidewalk removal and replacement that was not compliant around the exterior of the arena. So that grand total includes everything except the elevator. When you add the elevator of the $610,000, you get to the grand total of about $957,000. So yes, the elevator is a little more expensive than we anticipated. The estimate we got from the design consultant after they finished the design and had all the details was really close to our original estimate of $300,000. It was $350,000. So the best we can tell, some of the reasons that the cost is so high is just right now the commercial construction economy is doing quite well. There's a lot of building going on. It's tough to get bids, as we indicated. We bid it once, received absolutely no bids. We bid it again, received only one bid, and quite honestly, just some of our discussions with that bidder, they were hesitant to bid it. It's a very small project, and there will be a lot of sub-consultants or subcontractors to do the work. So when you have all of that combined, unfortunately, you're going to pay a little more than really I think we should have. But with the Attorney General compliance requirement hanging over heads, we are recommending that we move forward with it just to avoid any potential future issues with the Attorney General and to get the facility into compliance. Entertain any questions?
Questions? Alderwoman Schmidt.
Not sure at this point what my questions are. I had sent in a number of them after I got the packet, and I really appreciate all the information you provided in response to that. And I did take the opportunity to go over on Saturday, I guess, and walk through, and actually the Edge football and their competing team were in the dressing room, so you really got a sense of how narrow those hallways are, and that activity there. I guess I don't understand why we still don't have the opportunity to create some sort of a thoroughfare on what would be the south side of that restricted hallway. And I don't understand. I obviously don't know the building well. I guess I'm interested in a couple different things. I take it that from the Attorney General's perspective, the only thing we can do is to build this elevator. There is no other viable solution from their perspective. We have negotiated that through with them.
Well, the Attorney General did not dictate that we put an elevator in. They are just dictating the requirement to provide that access between the floors. How we chose to do it was up to us. We have discussed the issue with them. We've talked to them. There's really not a lot of any negotiation that can occur. Pretty much we are under their order to get this compliant. So they've looked at the facility. Their staff have come out. We've discussed this issue with their staff. And you can take this for what it's worth. They are in agreement that this is probably the most viable option. But they are you can't hold them accountable to saying that they dictated an elevator. That essentially was based off of staff and the consultants' an evaluation of the facility, looking at the various options. To somewhat address, I'll back up to that one slide a little bit and kind of talk you through that. So essentially what I think you're saying is make an adjacent hallway along this one or put something outside.
I'm looking at,
So somewhere in this area is where you have, there's existing dressing rooms, there's existing storage areas, there's existing equipment. We did evaluate that options. The problem you have with that is essentially adding another hallway relocates all of that equipment. All of those existing facilities or existing office spaces would more or less be eliminated. That is where the hockey team is. That is where a lot of their equipment's stored. That is where they do a lot of their like their workout room. We're actually tearing into their workout room considerably with this additional hallway we're going to have to build. So you're essentially displacing considerable equipment, material, rooms to build a hallway. By doing that, you would probably eliminate the ability to use this facility for that purpose anymore. You would have to remove so much of that they would no longer have essentially the obligated use that we're under contract with, and then quite honestly, just from a practical usability standpoint, they would have nothing left to be able to operate as they normally do. The one thing we did look at, as opposed to an elevator, was a external hallway. Essentially build an addition right here from the existing ADA entrance down to this entrance. The problem we have is with the road. So to get around this corner, there's a set of stairwells right here. So you have to have egress, emergency egress from the facility, so you can't remove this set of stairwells. They have to remain in place. You would have to build out and around that. Well, you can't essentially force people to walk out in the road. So then you would have to modify the existing cul-de-sac on Roosevelt Avenue and make it non-compliant, which I'm sure Mr. Karch would not appreciate or even allow. So that was an option we considered, essentially just not viable because, once again, the layout of the facility, just the way it essentially is, it's in a very tight spot. There's really no room to do much of anything. The elevator is essentially, although expensive, the most economical option to solve this problem.
I guess my other couple of questions have to do with the finances and a legal question. I think we all assumed that the building was built to be ADA compliant, and clearly it wasn't. And no reflection on you at all. I know you walked into this and you're dealing with it the best you can, and I appreciate that. I know I'm not alone in wondering what happened, and are we out of a recourse because it's been 12 plus years?
That's certainly something that we can look at, but we are talking about a very old facility. We have not gone back and evaluated exactly what happened when this was commissioned, in 2006. With this specific issue, though, I think you're really talking about a design flaw as opposed to a construction issue, because obviously, there wasn't an elevator or an access path designed from this floor level to this second level. So, that's something that obviously we can take a look at. Quite honestly, I think, we could spin our wheels and try and go back and figure all of that out. But if I'm being perfectly honest, the thought that we're going to actually be fruitful in that effort, I'm not sure we're going to be. But that's something that certainly the new city manager and I can discuss, and we can.
My recollection is that this was a design build package.
Okay. So.
And then just simply, where's the money going to come from for this?
Do you want to answer? Yeah, so they had money budgeted for this in the budget, and then
they who?
The city.
Oh, okay.
We had I think about $400,000 budgeted, and then they've got $200,000 in a program that they're not going to do, the Arc Flash program, that they're going to use that money instead of doing that this year at the arena. So they're rearranging funds, so there won't need to be a budget amendment or anything else. They're just going to put that off, at least for the future.
Thank you.
Alderwoman Bray.
Just a quick question. Thank you for all that information. So our materials indicate that we have till December the 31st, 2018 to be in compliance with the elevator. So when you look at the construction timeline, how much more time do we have to work this problem?
Well, really not much. So we already have concerns that we won't meet that deadline. Just in talking to the contractor, some of the materials that have to be ordered, there could be some delays in getting the materials. There could be some shipping delays or even material production delays. So the one thing that just when
the facilities department got involved with the Attorney General. Unfortunately, there was some issues associated with the prior management company. They weren't responding well to them, so there was some concerns on the Attorney General's part. We did our best to rectify those, to remedy those, and they've basically seen that the city has stepped up. They're wanting to address this problem. They want to get it resolved. They want to move forward and get past this, and so they have opened up and become a lot more receptive to cooperating and giving us additional time. So numerous occasions when we realized there were certain things we weren't going to meet their deadlines, we asked for an extension, essentially giving them justified reasons for those extensions, and they've approved it. So I don't believe we can delay in executing a contract. They're going to see that potentially as stalling and not wanting to move forward. That's just my personal opinion. But I do believe if we execute a contract, move forward and essentially work with the contractor to get a true schedule of the construction, present that to them. Even if it's past this deadline, I think they will approve an extension to get the construction done into next year. So I don't think we need to extend it very long. I can't really speak intelligently tonight about how long we're taking, but it's really going to depend on what we work out with the contractor. But I do believe they would give us another 6 months into next year to actually get the work done.
And it's my understanding this is kind of a premium price because you've made mention of the market conditions right now with commercial construction. Would there be a way to couple this construction with something else that could somehow kind of bring this down into more of a cost averaging, if you will? And if there is opportunity for extensions, as you mentioned, is there a way to time this and try to couple this with other construction that you anticipate at the arena?
Not really. Essentially, the way we go through our procurement process is we have to design a project, get plans prepared, and then bid that, and then essentially award it. There's really no other construction projects at the arena. When there's already one under the contract, it's already nearly complete, and that's the brine piping project. That's already ongoing. You're talking different essentially construction techniques or construction requirements there. So there's really nothing that could be coupled, and quite honestly, we're too far into the process to step back and add something to it, even if there was something, which I don't know of anything. So unfortunately, I don't think we can utilize that. Just to throw out another couple of things, I did mention that the timing with just the booming, essentially commercial contract projects are going on. We also have potentially the tariff increases that were enacted, so your steel costs are going up. There's a lot of things you could potentially say that could be affecting the price. So,
thank you very much. Thank you for
just we've got a couple aldermen. I just wanted to note that obviously this is a really critical discussion. It's just that we're way beyond what we had initially budgeted. So Alderman Black and then Matthew.
Jamie was first.
Jamie Matthew.
Sure that's my name? No, I'm just kidding. Russ, on the far, the restricted access, that red block there, on the far left side of that, there's a hallway that runs straight up, and then right next to the ice, there's an area called accessibility platform. Couldn't we go down that hallway over to the accessibility platform and just build a new ramp down to the floor on that corner? Because we're only talking about events where we've got a concert stage, the left-hand picture there, and so if the ice isn't in the way, isn't there a way just to go from the accessibility platform down onto the floor instead of, we build a doorway to block off the restricted hallway, and now it's restricted because there's a door there, but we have that whole hallway leads straight down to the elevator ramp there.
You're talking about this ramp, this area right here?
Yeah, go from there, which is labeled on the map as accessibility platform, and straight down that hallway to the elevators.
What you have here is essentially this is where they put the stage. They'll put the stage anywhere, and MenuWorks can speak more to this than me. I'm kind of just based off of what I've seen when I've been there. They'll do half stage, they'll do three-quarter stage, they'll do full stage. So this is pretty much always backstage. So this area, based on the way they set up the stages, is almost always behind the stage, behind any kind of, call it another restricted area if you want. But this is there's almost always equipment laying here. There's cords laying across here where they plug in their power. Since there's really no way to make that ADA compliant with the setups that are used at the facility. When they set up the stages, when they set up all the equipment, essentially everything behind the stage is, for the most part, off limits to anybody that's not associated with the event.
I was just thinking that a couple of barricades and leaving a 40-inch wide path to get through there would be a hell of a lot cheaper than $600,000. So, and just
But I think you
this
get
area
back
is
into
ADA
the,
compliant. You can't put stuff in this area. You can't, you can't leave equipment in this area. You can use the whole rest of the area, but we have 40 inches wide that we have to leave through here.
I think that would be something we'd have to discuss with VenueWorks. I don't believe that they're going to be agreeable to providing that access. Most of their talent aren't going to want that. That's something that we could discuss with them, but I do believe that gets right back into that the restricted area. Even though it's restricted for other reasons, it's restricted more for safety reasons.
We have someone maybe from VenueWorks. Did you want to?
I'm here to speak on comments to help out on this matter. If there's
Are you with Grossinger?
Yes, I am.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
That one area that is being talked about, yes, that is actually then behind the stage. So when it comes to concerts and so forth, they don't want any patrons and public behind the stage, and somebody even sitting in that area is not going to have the viewing of the performance that's happening. They're not going to see the front, of what's going on in front. They're going to be looking at things from behind, so that's not
Well,
feasible.
I was just talking about that as the way to, that's where we put the ramp to get them down onto the floor and out and back into the front of the crowd and everything.
The only thing is again, they're behind the stage. They're in a restricted show area, which on a given day, the only people that are back behind there, they have they're either the security team, they're police officers, roaming the floor. It might be staff because we have a purpose of being back there. Yes, that area on a concert day is filled with road cases and cables. You mentioned about trying to leave a path. I would actually invite you to come to a concert night to actually see how packed that area is with all of their show equipment, cases, cables. When Brad Paisley comes in with, 9 to 11 trucks and buses, there's a lot of equipment that's getting packed into the arena at that time.
Could you state your name and position for the record, please?
My name is Pat Allers. I am the Director of Finance.
Great.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Alderman Black.
Thank you. And thank you to everybody who's worked on this project. I don't think anybody up here wants to spend $600,000 on the arena at this point in time or any point in the near future. We're talking about percentages of our budget. And I think about this conversation's been percolating over the last few years, and I feel like this is at least the third or fourth time that I've heard about this in this time frame. And part of me wants to say, can we have like 3 different cost estimates of what a hallway would be, the issue with trying to rearrange, kind of to Jamie's point, why that wouldn't work in a Brad Paisley situation, building another hallway around, reconfiguring rooms, and then just pick the least expensive option. But I feel like we spent a lot of staff time on this already. Frankly, we can go back. It sounds like we're under some sort of time crunch, and who knows what the tariffs are going to do to any costs. But I guess I'm not enthusiastically supporting this, but this is one of those situations in which we kind of really don't have a choice. So we can go back and try to spend more staff time and resources, which could go above and beyond $600,000. We could look at some staff work that says this is why we picked this one, maybe have a subsequent report after we approve this evening since we're on some sort of a time crunch. But maybe we potentially could be, I don't know, maybe this is a question for Jeff or VenueWorks. Is there a way we could tack on like a quarter, like 1 quarter, 50 cents per ticket sold at the arena until we pay this off as like a fee, an ADA fee? Is that even an option for us?
That's something that we can certainly look at. We do have various fees associated with tickets, with parking, with other things that we do there. So, and again, it's, I think, just overall, not even related to the elevator, but over the last couple of years, this council's had to invest a very large amount of money into the arena. You're looking at it over a 10-year-old building and a lot of maintenance that was needed. And so that's something that certainly as staff we could go back and look at and see if maybe there needs to be some sort of a fee associated with the tickets there on this.
I just think about the things that I've seen at the arena, and if it costs me an extra $1 to do that, that's not going to change my mind in attending or not. But that would make a huge impact on our budget, at least starting to pay for and address some of these capital improvement needs.
Okay. Alderman Millawamboy.
I think.
Oh, okay.
All right. So I guess, I know it's a very expensive project, but what would make me feel better when I read it, I just didn't get a sense of the numbers. How many shows do we have that require this restricted access? How many individuals do we have with ADA issues that might need this? I think it would help me feel better about the whole thing.
From the aspect of concerts, family shows, everything that we've had, in the past 2 years, all of those would fall into this restricted access and needing to have, that area behind the stage restricted for people to be able to get into. I'm sorry, I forgot your other question that you had.
So I was talking about just getting some numbers in terms of how many shows we have, let's say, per year, that require this sort of restricted access. And if it's every show, I just want to get a general number. And then also, do we know how many individuals with, ADA accessibility issues would need to access this elevator?
Okay. I would say probably in the last year we've had between 10 to 12 shows where this would come into play. And then when you come to discussing ADA requirements with a ticketed show, we have to set aside a certain percentage of tickets in each price point and in each location for ADA accessibility to be purchased. And that's just a requirement that we have. So if somebody wants to have seats on the floor, we have to have ADA seats allotted for them to be able to purchase. Once an area is sold out of what we had allotted, we've still met our requirement for the ADA as far as allowing seats to be in certain areas. But as part of the requirements, if a show has 4 different price points, we have to have, I believe it's like 3 to 5% of the seats in that area, in that price point, allotted for ADA purchase. Does that help?
Yes, it does. It does. So if we have 10 to 12 shows, and I guess I'm trying to understand the whole restricted access kind of thing, instead of using an elevator, could we have somebody there to make sure that they're watching that access as people come through?
It becomes an issue where if promoters, if we were to do that, mm-hmm. and you've got a promoter or show that isn't favorable to that, mm-hmm. that information will go out to other promoters that they are friends with, that they work with, and sit back and say, don't go to Bloomington. We had this issue. We weren't happy with it. This is the only workaround the building has. That reputation will get out there, and your number of shows that we'll have will become less and less because of that reputation.
Okay. Makes sense. Thank you.
I wanted to thank Pat very much for coming. Lynn Cannon is out of town now, and I've been taking the questions down here, and there are a number of these things that may require a little bit more work on the staff's part, and so it could be possible that we could table this until the first meeting in August. We could come back with some more full answers here, and we would have Lynn Cannon back, and I think 3 weeks probably wouldn't delay the project that much if we could come back with some better answers for you.
But just to clarify, though, even if we had 3 people per event, we still are under ADA guidelines with the Attorney General's office.
Actually, you could have no one there that needs that and still have to require. An inspector from the Attorney General can walk into the building, and if you're not compliant, they can fine you. So you have to set up every single event to make it ADA compliant.
Okay, thank you. Other questions? Is there a motion either way on this?
Mayor, although I'm not happy about it, I will...
Would you please put on your mic?
I'll make the motion to approve.
Okay. Is there a second to that motion? Okay, second by Alderman Black. Okay, at this point, we are voting on the motion as presented. The motion, I suspect, reluctantly carries 5-3. There are 3 nays to announce, Madam Clerk.
Alderman Sage, Alderman Malumway, and Alderman Schmidt.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, at this point, we are going to move on to item C, and it's consideration of water department items, and I think it's fair to say, is this correct, that the main reason we have these on here is because of the amount, not necessarily because they're not budgeted or that they're controversial necessarily?
You're correct, Mayor.
And I believe Alderwoman Burgess would like to recuse herself.
Yes, I'll be recusing at 8C, but it's my understanding you're considering A, B, and C together, so I will step out for the entire conversation.
Is it...
that was the intent, but is there a way to break that apart, Jeff?
It's up to the council.
It's your discretion. If you're doing them together, I will step out for all of them. If you're doing them separately, I will stay for everything but C.
Okay.
Either way is fine.
Well, why don't we ask you to step out and we'll see. If it looks like we're going to be focusing on E and B, maybe we will change. Okay. Mr. Yale.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate the opportunity to speak to the council, mayor, and city manager Gleason this evening. We have 2 projects we're going to speak about. As the mayor said, they are both rather large dollar amounts, and that's why we're presenting them to you tonight. They're all budgeted in the FY19 budget. The first one we're going to talk about is the Lake Bloomington main process treatment plant roof replacement. It's about $323,000. We received 1 bid for this replacement. It is 32 years old, which is the age of the building itself. It's a single layer of asphalt shingles. I hesitated to bring in a shingle that I could go pull off the ground about any time we went to visit, but we've had many repairs. If you just think of your residential roofs, the staining you see, the roof is in need of replacement. We've repaired it a number of times over the past couple of years, just fixed points to make sure we get through to where we can budget and properly design and get the project bid. The next project is Cloud Street. From McGregor to Vale, it's two contracts, one for the construction and one for the observation. The water department analyzes a multitude of different issues with our water mains. This one has a lot of breaks, the age, cast iron, and smaller in size. So point out a couple of new features on this map that we haven't been able to show before until recently. Those dots, those multicolored dots, are main breaks in those 3 block stretches. We have them categorized by year and type to drill down. We've recently added those to our GIS functionality, so we're able to overlay those with Mr. Karch's road maps and try to provide some uniform approach to our infrastructure improvements. Cast iron tends to break. Some of the mains are 4-inch. Ryan Drive, which is north-south, right here in the middle, was replaced in 2016. The next project after that was to follow on and do Cloud Street. So we received multiple bids. Gildner was our low responsive bidder. The next portion of this project is construction inspection. I've presented to you before, most recently on Zarek Drive water main replacement and some others. The water department is not staffed to provide on-site phase 3 or construction inspection services full-time. So we've contracted those out recently with some of our local engineering firms. In this case, this one's presented to be proposed and awarded to Farnsworth Group. They recently completed Zarek Drive, which we're cleaning up and finalizing, and they've done a good job on that one as well. So with that, I'll turn it to questions and answer any further insights you may have.
Questions of Mr. Yale or a motion? Alderwoman Bray.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the water department items A, B, and C as set out in the agenda.
Okay. Is there a second to the motion made by Alderwoman Bray?
Second.
Second by Alderwoman Schmidt. Any further discussion? Okay, if everyone will go ahead and vote. The motion carries 7-0. There are no nays to announce, Madam Clerk, and we could let Alderwoman Burgess back in for the last item on our regular agenda. Okay. And item 8D is a discussion regarding the local wage Increased Transportation Act on disclosing payments to Robert Combs as requested by the Human Resources Department. And this is information only, but we do have a very brief presentation and a brief council discussion budget. Nicole?
And I'll steal Director Tetzloff's words, and I have only one thing to do this evening, and that is to introduce to you Josh Hansen, who's our Compensation Benefits Manager. I'm going to let him present this item to you, and it's the Local Wage Transparency Act. We do have a retirement that we need to bring forward to you, not necessarily for approval, but for transparency purposes. So Josh is going to cover that for us.
Great. Thanks, Nicole. And as Nicole mentioned, this is our third employee who is considered to be classified non-union, who has a sick leave bank. He is grandfathered, and as a result, 3 months prior to his retirement, which will be the 5th of October, so in the months of July, August, and September, we will take his sick leave based on his current rate of pay per hour and provide that to him. And then, of course, when he leaves, he would have a supplemental amount of vacation time that he's banked as well. So everything is included in the packet, but specific to the amounts per the Transparency Act, he will receive $36,772.32 worth of benefit. That would be applied as pensionable wages. And then also $7,600.
So just to clarify, he's not getting a check for $36,000.
Correct. So each group is a little different across the city, specific to the union collective bargaining agreements, or CBAs. But for the non-union folks, what we do is that money is actually converted into a retirement health savings account, which is administered through ICMA-RC, similar to our 457 plans. And so that those funds are available to our retirees when they are no longer with the city. But also at the time of retirement, he will have $7,666.90 of accrued vacation time. That'll be provided to him as well. Of course, all of these balances, if they were to change over the next 3 months, would be adjusted during that final period that he is with the city. The net increase as a result of this into his pension per month is anticipated to be $313.87. Of course, IMRF will finalize that information once they have his termination data from the city. And then, of course, the accelerated payment, or AP, that will come across to the city approximately 4 to 6 weeks after he does retire is estimated to be just above $49,000. Any questions?
Questions? Comments?
Sorry, Scott. Just for just so people hear it, you said that he was grandfathered in. Could you explain the difference between the old plans and the way that we handle for all current employees, please?
Correct, yeah. And there are different, I guess, versions, for lack of a better term. But a change was made as of May 1st, 2012, specific to the classified non-bargaining employee population, where those who were actively employed at the time are able to not only accrue sick leave, but when they do retire from the city, we have several rules in place. It's called the Rule of 75, which means whenever they do retire, if you take a person's age plus their years of service, that they would then be eligible for the benefit. So those of us, for example, I'll just tell you myself, I've been with the city a little over a year. I do have sick time that I accrue similar to these employees, but let's say I were to stay with the city 20 plus years and retire, I would not have a benefit. That sick leave that I've accumulated would then be converted into pension credits, and you can accrue up to 6 months specific to the city, and that's very standard. Yep, sure.
Okay. Alderman Black.
Thank you, and thank you, Josh.
Uh-huh.
I think actually this actually might be a question better for Jeff. So I can remember a couple different times in which we've talked about sick leave buyback. And there was a conversation I recall, I think it was last summer, where we talked about it, and we were going to wait for Springfield to do some legal maneuvering, and I think some answers have come back. What would the legal ramifications be if we were to just end the grandfathering for that prior to 2012 time frame? What would the cost of the city be, risk to the city? What would that look like for us?
Yeah, we'll have to get a lot of those numbers, but as you mentioned, we were waiting, kind of seeing what happened in Springfield. As you heard, we've talked about before, the city of Springfield was successful in the circuit court and then the appellate court litigation. We just got the decision back, or we got a copy of their unfair labor practice decision this morning. That came back earlier this month. And the city was successful in that as well, although it's very fact-specific and was related to what communications and what negotiations they had with their unions. So when you talk about the impact, we would have to, and this is something that HR is working on and can provide the council, but we have to look at what are the costs of any retirements that would happen, any vacancy savings. We'd also have to look at issues related to, even though we've been, there have been other court cases out there, we do have previous threats from certain unions saying that they would fight any changes to this. So we likely would be fighting in court, some of these changes. But we do think there could be a path, and what we would have to do is get all of those numbers put together and bring back some of those options to the council.
I, for one, would be interested in hearing what that looks like, maybe some future committee of the whole. Now that we have some more information from Springfield in that case, I think we're at a point where we need to make some decisions about what that looks like.
And do you see some other, just for the record, I see some other nodding heads, and I think in the past if we were not unanimous, we were pretty close to unanimous in wanting to do what we could do to end the practice of sick leave buyback.
And real quick, Scott, I just want to make sure we're all on the same page, because obviously this is a heavily debated topic, and something, at least in my position, I had a lot of learning over the last year, but also I get a lot of questions from employees. And so, because we do have a number of folks who are at or near retirement, when you say in the practice of sick leave buyback, just to make sure we're on the same page, are you referring to the way in which the sick leave buyback is paid out over the 3 months prior, just so that all of those earnings are deemed to be pensionable? Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And I do want to, another just point of interest or clarification for the group. We have been, of course, similar to what Jeff said, we've been doing some analysis internally as well as with some other folks or groups, and we would have some impact information to share as early as next month.
I'd be very interested in seeing that.
Great. Thank you very much. At this point, we don't really need any specific action. That was just for public presentation. And thank you, everyone, for the information. And we move next to City Manager's discussion. Mr. Gleason.
Thank you, Mayor. A couple of public service announcements. Since May 1st, solid waste program is at the, there we go. I'm going to start over. Long-standing practice to show some of the coming events for the city. So here those are up there for everybody, and they can be found on the city's website as well. A couple of public service announcements. Since May 1st, solid waste program changes went into effect. City staff have been tagging bulk waste at the curb and placing door hangers to provide notice of charges before collection. This grace period was intended to give citizens a chance to get familiar with the new practice of accepting materials at the Citizen Convenience Center. Starting on August 1st, city crews will collect bulk waste material placed at the curb for a cost of $25 per bucket without waiting 2 weeks for the sticker and door hanger process. The intention of the change is to keep our community clean, since material previously could be in the parkway for up to 4 weeks before collection. We intend to put the information out in a press release on Friday, as well as adding information to our city website and Facebook. PSA number 2, Received word from Rowe Construction that they will be starting road work on Veterans Parkway the night of July 30th. Lane closures will begin at 9 p.m. and everything will reopen the very next morning at 7 a.m. And then finally, thank you for this opportunity to serve as your city manager. I'm excited.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Gleason. Appreciate that very much, and we're very glad to have you. And so my first order of business under mayor's discussion would be to just once again welcome you, and thank you so much. Look forward to turning to my left and seeing you for many times to come. Also, I just wanted to congratulate Alderman Scott Black on coming in second in a tricycle race.
The number one loser.
There are some people who fell over, kind of just like laughing, dun 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 dun, boom. Actually, I got a tricycle gift 2 days afterwards. And so, better luck next year for you to be first or for me to not fall over. And also, just want to invite everyone again to the 25th anniversary of Bistro and our first Pride event this coming Saturday evening. And that's it. Aldermanic comments. Alderwoman Bray.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to give a shout out to our water department, to Bob Yale and to Joe Darter. Those two were a great dynamic duo in doing a lake tour and a facilities treatment tour for myself and for Alderman Howman earlier this month. Really, when you go up and you visit the lake and the facility, I don't know a better term other than to say the TLC, just the extraordinary care that they give to this important piece, which is water quality for all of our citizens, is just commendable. Their efforts at for shoreline preservation, soil containment, and just, again, going through the treatment center, y'all are top notch. So thank you for the time you spent with me. I learned an awful lot and sure do, again, appreciate the great water quality that we have here in Bloomington.
Thank you so much, Alderwoman Bray. Anyone else? Alderman Massey. Got you right the first time.
Yeah, thank you. Bloomington 101 applications are still open, right? Just to give that a shout out that
is Nora around?
People can still apply to do that, because I thought I went through that years ago, like the second class, and I thought that was a wonderful opportunity, and I just want to make sure that people are aware that that's still open and anybody can do it.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Anyone else? Okay, is there a motion to adjourn? Moved by Alderman Black. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alderwoman Schmidt. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. We are adjourned, and Steve Rasmussen wins the bet. Well, no, but this is fast.
Oh, okay.
So I think it is actually 8:15.
Did you say 8:15? Right?
It's 8:16. Okay, you're 1 minute off. And Cherry, I have